Welcome back to the Low Man Help podcast. We're joined today by a very special guest. At any time in your life, if you've been in the internet discourse of NBA basketball, you've 100% had an argument with him. It's Coach Nick from BBALLBREAKDOWN. Coach, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, don't forget, it's not a channel, it's a conversation. So however you want to characterize that, I'm in. And it certainly has been an interesting ride for all these years.
Yeah, any engagement is good engagement, right? Like they love you, they hate you, it's still popping on a view, right?
Yeah, but make no mistake, like I'm not just saying things to say things. Like I actually mean it when I say things, and I bring video evidence usually to back that up. So, you know, that's the one thing that kind of gets frustrating is that they're just telling me I'm doing it for like clicks when I'm like, no, I actually believe what I'm trying to tell you or help you understand better.
You've had some pretty cool ones. You've been doing this for such a long time. What's the one video or interview that really sticks out in your mind of like kind of like I have to talk about matrix moments when working with guys of like everything kind of changes. Like, is there one that sticks out where you're like, man, this was really cool. This was a moment.
Wow. Well, I think, you know, the first one, because, you know, I'll cover games. And so when I do a breakdown of a game or a player, those get a lot of views. But when I interview NBA players one-on-one exclusively about their games, those often don't do nearly as well. So, and that always kind of made me, you know, it was always head scratching because this is the chance to hear, you know, an NBA player get answer questions that no one ever asked them about footwork and about, you know, how they shoot. But I do remember I interviewed Richard Jefferson during the conference finals in Cleveland when he was there, whenever that was. And that might have been the first one that actually got a lot of views. And it was interesting. And I think primarily because of how good Richard Jefferson was. Yeah. And I think we're seeing it now, right? I don't know if anyone had known while he was playing that he had designs to be an announcer or whatever he's doing now, like on TV. But that might have been one of the first things even for him as well, where we had a good conversation. He was really informed. And I was glad I could do that. And it really was, the first one that actually blew up and let me know, okay, you know, there are ways to make this work and people will actually come and be interested in it.
I love that. I'm going to go watch that one. That will be a good one. I'll make sure to link that in the comments and in the description and everything. But we're here today. We're talking about your hometown team. You're out in Los Angeles. The Lakers are your hometown team. They're always on, you know, the Spectrum deal, the $300 million plus deal. So they're 36-21 right now. They've won 4 in a row. They're 8 for their last 10. They have, you know, since January 15th, one of the best defenses in the league, top in defensive rating. They're first in effective field goal. They're covering the three really well. They're just doing things that are winning basketball. And so when I think about this team and the start of the year when JJ got hired, it wasn't, you know, anywhere near what it looks like now. Like the whole thing that he got hired to coach is totally different. And it's a whole different puzzle, but it's probably one that he's really enjoying trying to solve. So this team lately, since the All-Star break, what have you seen? What have you liked? What have you disliked?
Well, I think the thing that jumps out at me first is like how they were integrating Luka into the offense. And by the way, the whole defensive thing is just remarkable to me. It's hard to kind of wrap my head around because they weren't really good at all with Anthony Davis, you know, with one of the better defenders in the league anchoring their defense. They were, I think, 20th by the time he got traded to Dallas. So it was like, how do you put Luka in that equation and then get that much better? Now, Vanderbilt joins them, and that helps. Yeah. And then they also picked up Dorian Finney-Smith, and he's been, you know, he's a really good defender as well. So they've been able to, around the edges, sort of find ways to make that all work. And then, you know, there's a little injection of energy now that Luka is there with some passion. Like, I don't know, did you watch that Dallas Lakers game?
Oh, he had the juice. Man, he had the juice going.
Yeah.
Passion, absolutely.
Missing, right? That might be, okay, so we always talk about, oh, too many threes or this and that, whatever. I think it's the drama of like, they were playing really hard like a playoff game, but it had this sort of mix where there was some anger involved, right? And we can respond to that. That, I think, is probably the biggest deal. And so I was just talking to somebody else earlier about this today, about how maybe everyone's like too nice now. Like all of the quote unquote knuckleheads that were in the league in the 90s, like they're all gone and everyone grows up together now and they're all friends. Yeah. So we don't have that kind of animosity like we used to. And it's a cleaner game. It doesn't have a lot of fights like they try to get rid of. But I honestly think that might be the biggest issue because all the other things that everyone's pointing to about why refereeing and all these different things, none of those things really ring true to me. But what I do respond to now is thinking about that. So like the Luka thing was great. And to see Nico Harrison was in the audience and he was like staring him down. I mean, that was great stuff. And then getting back to X's and O's, just to watch Luka get so many high post touches is really exciting because it lets LeBron kind of hang out and get some rest as an old 40-year-old out there. And then the other thing is, when you look about what offense is, it's really you're trying to create a small advantage and then build that into a big advantage that leads to a shot. Yeah. And that's when you see like those ISO ball and they get those bad shots. It's like that's when you try and get through to players like that. When you say like there was no advantage there, so that shouldn't have been the shot. Now, Luka can get a small advantage at any time he wants. There's no question he could do any kind of dribble move and get into that where he's a little side-by-side to his defender. And once that happens and he kicks it and it goes back one more time to LeBron, of all people, now LeBron has got a big advantage that he can attack. Whereas in the past, it was LeBron who never got that opportunity. He had to be the one creating the small advantage, and then it would maybe come back to maybe not. So to see LeBron being able to like spot up on the wing and like attack on the catch and go downhill because Luka created all that for him, it's just like been a revelation too for their offense. And so it's really great to see what JJ's been doing and how to create that and get him open. It's been really cool.
Yeah, you said something about offense, and I've heard it described as dominoes. But I've always thought when I've talked to players, like you're trying to win early to give yourself a chance to win late. Like I heard Mark Schlereth on ESPN say it one time about how wide receivers like get open. And if you don't win at the line, if you get jammed up at the line for 5 seconds, well, you have no chance to like actually catch the pass down the field, right? You have to win early to give yourself a chance to win late. And it always stuck with me when I was working with players or thinking about offense. Like you want to win early to get a hip turn and then play from that advantage. And like whether it's you finishing, whether it's help and you move the ball and then you keep pressing that advantage. I always thought that was like the way to do it. And you're right. They have guys that can do that. So let's stay on offense, because I think to me, one of the things that's been most interesting with them is I was on the All NBA podcast with Tim Legler after the Charlotte game. And one of the things that was so clear during the Charlotte game to me when I was looking at it is like you have these two guys, Luka and LeBron, who in the NBA, they've only played one role. It's the heliocentric alpha, grandmaster chess player. I move the pieces around. And it felt like they were both like, especially that game, they were both still doing that. Neither one of them was moving off the ball. Neither one of them was playing off closeouts. Like they had the one moment where Luka got a post up and LeBron got a dunk off the closeout, but that was it. That was all. And so to me, it always felt like, and Legler said this, like it's going to be Luka's team. And, LeBron had to be the one to turn into this 0.5 player, but asking one of the best players ever to be like, okay, the role you've always done, like you got to take a step back. Like he's going to be the one that decides that. Like you can't make him do it. And to me, the past 3 games that they've played together, Minnesota, Denver, Dallas, like seeing him be a 0.5 player, because it's been obvious, like it has been unbelievable to watch. And you see their team kind of like go from, I don't know, this is clunky, what are they? To after he's made that shift, like they're a real contender. They're a serious team, because you're right. Him playing off an advantage is terrifying to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And, JJ Redick is a sicko. He's the guy who's been staring at footage. He might have looked more footage than I have in the last several years, and that's pretty hard to do. And so he's prepared. He really understands how this works, and he also knows how to communicate. They've already established that like whatever rapport they have from the podcast between him and LeBron is there. And you're right. Like LeBron, isn't necessarily easy for him to suddenly switch, but I think it will appeal to him because it makes everything easier for him. And, and so the question is an ego, like, will he accept that, even when he scores, he might have to point to Luka and say, hey, thank you for giving me that pass. And by the way, at least once a game, you're going to get an 80-foot pass from Luka.
They're so good at that. Like Roy Williams used to always say for transition defense to offense, first 3 steps, like your first 3 steps are everything. You turn, you go, and then you survey. When I see them now, I have not seen LeBron take 3 steps every single time to run like he is now trying to get out and train. It's awesome to see. He's a freight train.
And how about this? Because of that, what you might end up seeing is a little bit more closeouts from LeBron, of which he wouldn't do a lot of because he wanted to conserve energy or whatever, because now he can close out and just keep going and have a huge head start, and he doesn't need to have any space if he's in the lane and usually it's a guard back, then Luka just throws it up and he'll go get it. And then what's also cool is that they flip that, and then Luka will get a pass from LeBron. So,
Luka's got to be a few steps ahead.
Yeah, right.
He can't take off the same way.
No, fair enough. But you can see, like, even when they did it in the post where I think Luka kept passing it to LeBron and then back, and they did that, the semi-pro scene from that movie. That was really cool. And so the only thing I can say about what they can continue to do and get better at is getting LeBron and Luka involved together more. So, it's one thing to have, LeBron in the weak side corner where when Luka's with the ball on the elbow and then they're operating and cutting. But I want to see more get action. I want to see more pick and rolls. I want to see them together and making the defense have to make a decision because I have a feeling that that's going to be like pick and pop city for LeBron. He's been shooting the three really well for, a year and a half now out of the blue. And so those shots are going to be really easy as well. And I know that that's what they can save down the stretch in big games when they need buckets. But that's where it gets fun. And so I anticipate that JG will start to kind of encourage that a little bit more, considering you have two players that are probably hard to encourage as far as like, they want to do their thing. They know what works for them. And then, that's a true test of the coach is can he get them a little bit more onto another page that gets them even, higher efficiency shots.
I don't know if I like the idea of them doing two-man game stuff together, only because they're both going to be guarded by similar players. Like it seems to me like whatever the advantage would be that one of them would have with the ball, the other one would have the same advantage, or they just seem like a really easy switch. Like, and I know like a lot of times, like Luka's getting blitzed at half court. LeBron's getting wide open shots. Like we're getting alley-oop dunks. Like it's something incredible that to see him back off. But like I always think like maybe putting them together, I think they've started to do stuff with Austin Reaves a little bit more because like he's getting that third defender on the perimeter. Like he's getting the smaller guy. He's getting the Mike Conley. And so like that's a lot more difficult of a defensive kind of adjustment than LeBron and Luka seem like really easy switches. So I love the idea of LeBron playing closeout actions like further away, putting his man in the position to make a choice like, oh, damn, do I leave LeBron James or do I stay here and give up like open stuff? They ran the Brad Stevens Spain to backdoor play and Dorian Finney-Smith got a wide open corner three out of it, but that was with Austin. I like the idea of like Austin being involved with one of those two just because of the lesser defender. I don't know. Maybe they get to it later.
Well, I think it's a nice balance because, again, if you stretch the defense far by having them as far apart as possible, that also is good. And so, and if it's not even maybe pick and roll where they switch it and they can contain it, then it's handoffs or get actions where it's a little bit faster and it's harder to do that switch. And you'll probably get an advantage off of that and then create it. But Austin Reaves has been feasting and getting good looks as well on that one. Rui has been able to get open too. They're all going to just be benefiting. Connect will be getting, even more open shots than he was. So all of that is really, really encouraging for the Lakers, and just a huge headache for the league because however this trade was allowed to go through is going to be a book or two, I suppose, when someone finally publishes it. But it's the most confounding thing we've seen in a long time, and I'm sure there's plenty of conspiracy theories out there, but the bottom line is they got him, they have him, they're going to be able to ride this for a while, and I don't know exactly what you're going to end up having to do. I mean, there might be some notions of different kind of zones you can use, I think, and then sort of rely on the fact that maybe, Luka has never been that consistent of a three-point shooter, and that maybe LeBron falters back to what most of his career has been, which has been, below average from three. But it's hard to imagine that's going to happen. He's proven it. He was over 40 last year. He's like 39 now. So he might have just figured that out, unlocked it in his old age.
I like him shooting the ball. I didn't always love him shooting the ball before. I like what I see when he shoots the ball right now. He's got his own. I always think when I think about like mechanics and players, I always think about like if you have unorthodox mechanics, but you shoot a really high volume and shoot a good percentage, like there's no need to mess around with stuff like Tyrese Halliburton, for instance. But like if you're shooting something unorthodox and you're shooting lower volume or a lower percentage or something like that, like kind of need to like let that go. So I always think like that's kind of the barometer, and his shot for me, like it looks nice, like, and he's shooting the same repeated motion over and over and shooting high percentage. Like I can't imagine that there's going to be a lot of faltering in terms of like what he is as a shooter right now. He kind of is what he is. And like, that's a really good shooter. And I think his mindset is built to shoot the ball right now. And I think that's a huge deal. Like when I worked with players, like so much of it is how you see the game. And I think probably when he was younger, like he saw those catches as drives, like rip and go. And I want to get downhill and I want to create contact or get to the rim. And I think he sees a lot of those catches now as like, you know, balls on the way. Like, what's my shot prep footwork looking like? Like this is going up as soon as I get it. Power, load, rhythm, and balance. Like I'm ripping it. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
You mentioned Reaves, and I think like he's the guy that he's feasting because he's getting a lesser defender. And because you got to bring your top two perimeter guys for Luka and LeBron. So he's getting, you know, one level down than he would normally get. And then he's somebody that is like an amoeba offensively. Like if it's spot up, if it's DHO, if it's pick and roll, if it's cutting, like you name it, he's undrafted. Like he's going to do it. Like he's got that janitor mindset of like, it doesn't matter what it is. Like I'm getting these reps and I'm going to take advantage of them. And I think he's soaring right now. Like, what do you see from him?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, I'm looking at right now his stats for the last 8 games, which pretty much covers the Luka era. And he's almost, you know, he's 23.5 points a game. He's not shooting amazing, but he's certainly really aggressive. And then he's getting 6 assists a game. And what I'm starting to see is, and this happens a lot when you have a player like Luka. So they're still getting used to Luka, right? He'll throw incredible, crazy passes. And like, you know, Vanderbilt wasn't even looking and it went out of bounds. Like he didn't even know.
The one on the baseline.
Yeah, it was like a hook pass, like around a player. And like, you know, but what was really cool about that moment was that Luka posts up and the low post a couple plays later and then throws another unbelievable skip pass that LeBron used to throw all the time to the weak side corner to Vanderbilt, who hits the 3, right? He trusted him to say, I'm going to throw it to you again, which is really great. And so I think that a lot of times, or not all the times, but sometimes when you have a passer like that, it gets a little bit infectious. And other players start to pass as well and look to make those kind of passes. And we've seen Reaves do those kind of passes in his career before anyway. He's, you know, he might not have been on the ball as much. We don't get a chance to see it in volume. But so I'm seeing that, and it's indicated there in the assist numbers, which is for a third, you know, option in their offense to average 6 assists a game is pretty impressive. And that just tells you how well the offense is functioning, how willing he is to move the ball. So he's just a hard guard because he also understands how to draw fouls, which I suppose we're going to talk about at some point today. And, you know, that skill is really important because it delves into like ball handling and balance and read and react and all the different things you need to be able to pull up and shoot a shot at any second at any instant. You need to have the ability to do that. So I think that is a real invaluable thing to him. And he's also a bit of an underrated defender, believe it or not. So I think he's been able to be solid there alongside the other guys. Another reason why they've been able to, you know, win these games and look really, I mean, the defense they did against Denver was oppressive, you know, and they did that same thing they had realized from JJ was watching, I forgot who did it. Where you don't guard Jokic with the center, you let the center roam and then double. Gobert wasn't guarding him, and they had like maybe it was Cat guarding him.
Nas, anybody to like slow him up a little bit. Well, let's stay there on the defense. Like when I see their defense, like they're lights out now. Like they're first in the league in almost everything since January 15th, and we talked about Anthony Davis being gone and what's going on. And one of the things that I see is like JJ is in this place where he's treating this regular season or this portion of it. I really think he's treating it as just a lab experiment. And like any good idea that's out there, he's like, you know what, let's see if it is like something that's going to work for us. And the one that I see him doing all the time now, and I'll tell you the guys he's done it with over the past week, but have you heard of the Roberson Rule from Seth Partnow?
Well, I mean, it's probably don't guard him, right?
Right. So it's basically saying that if a bad 3-point shooter made 100% of their shots, but it didn't cause them to increase the volume that they would shoot, you should never guard them. And so like, it's a little bit of that. It's like the Roberson Rule, but it's kind of like amoeba'd with a little bit of like the Rudy Gobert and like the funnel gravity rule. So like he's doing the Roberson Rule a little bit where he's taking specific shooters on each team, Russell Westbrook, Aaron Gordon, Terrence Shannon, Jaden McDaniels, Dante Exum, Najee Marshall, and he's taking the gravity. He's not giving them the standard NBA gravity as a shooter. He's saying, cool, no problem. I'm going to take that gravity and I'm going to give it to Kyrie. I'm going to give it to Jokic. I'm going to give it to Anthony Edwards. And he's shrinking the defensive shell and just allowing guys, that they pick and choose to shoot the ball. And what's been so fascinating about it is a lot of teams do this, but they lose their conviction after a few makes. He does not lose his conviction. They go through the wall with this. Like, they will live and die by the strategy that they're going with. And it's one of the reasons I've been so impressed with what they're doing defensively.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's nothing like getting in the head of a player and to do that by letting him be wide open. It can affect the guys who aren't really good shooters, right? So that's part of it. Every shot that fifth person in their hierarchy takes a shot is a good one for you because it's not the top guys shooting it. So it is remarkable that it doesn't happen, that much more. Like every once in a while, we'll see it against Russ or something like that, or even Draymond, where they just completely are in the lane. Because remember, in the NBA, if they have the ball, then you don't need to be guarding them at all. You can be in the lane,
right? And
then you have 2.99 seconds once they don't have the ball, and you can dance around and really clog things up. So I mean, it's a Warriors conundrum because they can't. It's hard to start, Draymond and then a big man who doesn't shoot because now you got 40% of your lineup doesn't give you any spacing.
Draymond's always been a little bit more insulated by Steph though, because he can go quick DHO or quick get action, and like if you're not at the level with Steph, like night, like it's done. So like he's always been a little bit more insulated. So I'll be curious to see how they function with the Warriors if they play games that mean something in terms of Draymond.
Well, but they have something that they've never had before, a sweet shooting big man in this guy, Quentin Post, who just showed up out from the Netherlands. And I'm telling you, and he's playing minutes, he's starting, and now he's not starting. He started the second half last night when they came roaring right back. So they might need to just sort of keep him in the lineup to begin the whole game. But he can set a pin down for Steph, who might curl that like out the top. He's going to take both of those defenders with him, at least a step. And then if Post steps back, he's behind the line. He's wide open on these threes. It's like they've never had that before.
Yeah, that's a nice
and he's an old rookie. He's not like a young guy, doesn't know what he's doing. So that's been a bit of a revelation for them. And again, like the space that's now created, and then you throw Butler out there who's just really smart and deliberate and knows how to run an offense. That's working so much better for them than it did with even Wiggins, who's a good player. But I think the rival Post has really been another part of that thing that's really given him a boost. So with the Lakers, it's like, yeah, they're going to run Jackson Hayes out there, who really isn't. It's funny. I thought for sure his numbers would jump way up. He was getting all these lobs. And I feel like I just looked. Let me check. But like do I still have the Lakers? Yeah, the Lakers in the last 8 games, Jackson Hayes is averaging 8 points, which is probably close to what it was before.
Mm-hmm.
So that's weird to me because it looks from the face of it that like he should be getting 12 points and 8 rebounds in his sleep the way this is going, and it's not quite happening that way. Maybe it's a minutes thing. I don't know. Have you seen that?
He's only playing 22 minutes. I think when I look at it, it's really coming down like, to me, one of the things is they're getting what we talked about earlier, where they're getting an advantage. They're pressing it. It's not so much where it's Luka pick and roll and it's either finish or lob. There's a lot of blitzing up at the level. No matter what he's shooting, like you're still going to be up at the level. Like Minnesota did it the other night. Vanderbilt had a lot of good stuff in the pocket. But I think it's more so that it's closeout opportunities. And I'm sure there will be some help up the lane actions where he gets lobs, but it's not as much of what you saw with like Lively or Gafford. It's not that offense. Like it's got a lot more pop to it. And to me, one of the things that, like when I look at the offense, we talked about LeBron shifting to 0.5 in the past 2 games. And this is all from Second Spectrum. In the past 3 games that they played, since the Charlotte game, so Denver, Minnesota, and Dallas, he's had his 2 season lows of average seconds per touch and average dribbles per touch. So never this year was he under 3 seconds per touch for the game. In the game against Denver, he was 2.8, and that was his lowest one. In that game, he was 1.83 dribbles per touch, right? So his lowest. He had never been under 2 dribbles per touch for the season. Then against Minnesota, he's 2.5 seconds per touch and 1.4 dribbles per touch. So like he's leaned in so far, and I think he's getting like their offense is getting these actions where it's not a lob after all these dribbles. It's kick out 3, it's kick out drive, hit dunk, it's transition dunk. And his level of leaning into the 0.5 nature of it has been a total game changer for how it runs.
Well, let me throw some numbers out because I just figured out for the last 3 games. Is that what we're looking at?
The 3 games they've played together that they've won, these big ones, Denver and Dallas and Minnesota.
Well, let's just pretend it's the last. I think there might be one in there Luka didn't play, right? But like, I'm looking at the last 3. And at the very least, LeBron is scoring 28 a game, shooting 58% from the field, 41 from 3, with almost 13 rebounds and, almost 5 assists a game. So, yeah, like this is sort of where it's an interesting conundrum because I know he could do the other way, heliocentric wise, but I've never liked that's the way of attacking an offense anyway. And I always felt like the guys like Kobe or LeBron, if they just let the offense work more for them anyway, they would shoot, they'd score more, they would shoot better, the team would be better. You know what I mean? There just seemed to be this notion that, well, I got to do this because that's the only way we're going to get a shot. And it was like, even when they were shorthanded, I remember in the finals in 2015, I guess it was, when Kevin Love and Kyrie were hurt.
Yeah.
Like what they decided to do to like just completely bullet to a crawl and like somehow lure a double team and then kick it out and hopefully somebody made a shot. I don't think they needed to do that. I thought for sure they could have continued to run offense, get the defense moving, create spacing, and then use LeBron that way to draw people. But however he gets there is great with me. And there's no question this is a real exciting way to watch basketball. Like this is what you want to see going forward, even if it's independent of the whole Mavericks thing, which was an added layer of emotionality and conflict. We're still getting like the entertainment value, I think, right? And that sort of curiosity of like, what are they going to do next? What kind of really cool pass is he going to make or what kind of finish? And so that's what we've been missing, I think, right? I think that's sort of the generic vanilla part of what's going on with all these NBA offenses. And so, this has now become a must watch again, having, in LA, they're not my team per se, but certainly they're easy to watch when I'm here. I'm turning them on every night when, I would think at some point in November, I was like, I would skip a game or two without a problem.
Yeah, they're must watch right now. And you're right about, star players. I think it comes back to you have to have somebody like all of these guys have all played the same role getting to the NBA. They've all been the best player on every team they've been on. And I think like when you get to the league and you're at LeBron's level or you're at, Shai's level or an MVP level, like it's really difficult to be like, oh man, I played this style of basketball. You want me to play somewhere different, but like I'm here because I play this style of basketball. Like we're great because I play this style. And I think Luka adds this element of like looking eye to eye of like, oh man, like that's me. Like that's what I was like when I was 25. Like he sees it the way that I see it. Like, and I think it's allowed LeBron to kind of like let go of that tightness of like holding on to like, I play this way. I have to play this way. And it's allowed him, I think it's freed him up for a few ways. It's freed him up athletically. I mean, the plays he's making, he had the putback dunk, he's getting out in transition, finding easy ones. Like, he's posting up, getting other ones. Like it's freed him up to be an athletic, like freak of nature, which he's always been. But when you have the ball and you're trying to create offense, like that drains you. And then it's also freed him up mentally. Like his IQ is just, it's always there, but it was being used to move others around. Now he's able to go out there and hunt space, and he's able to go find where the advantages are, what to do, what not to do. He's pulling defenders with him on cuts. Like he's finding cuts on his own. And to me, it's been one of those things that like, until he was able to see that in somebody else on his team, well, he wasn't going to let go of that rope because he's like, I know we're going to be able to get X, Y, and Z if I play this way. And so to me, that's been one of the most fascinating things to see. And it's been one of those things where, to see him evolve. I'm not a huge LeBron guy. It's like he's the best ever or this or that, but he is a great one in our game. And to see him evolve to like the next role, I think is something really exciting because he's definitely got another gear in him. Like they didn't have a championship team when it was him and AD this year. Like he might have a championship team and he's got a gear in him where he's like, this is how we hit that ceiling. And it's kind of cool to see him go after it in a different way.
Right. And to see a 40-year-old like win a title like that, I mean, I know he's got Luka behind him, or next to him, but would be an incredible story as well. And I think in the past, what he had thought was, okay, I'm going to blend in a little bit more, was he'd get the ball out of bounds in the backcourt and just sort of toss it to a teammate and then let them go. and he kind of just wander off and stand there on the weak side, right? Whereas now they're hitting Luka on the high post. Reaves is screening away for him. He's curling around, coming open for threes. He's moving in space now in a way that wasn't what was happening. And I think that's spot on as far as the mental aspect of it, because it is wearing on you when you have to feel like I got to create everything for everybody all the time. And now he can kind of pick and choose the spots and get back and like see the whole floor a little bit and survey before he moves. So it's really, really tough. You got to try and picture like what kind of team, what kind of personnel would you need to have to beat this team in the playoff series. And I mean, it goes down to what it used to be for LeBron's teams, where you needed the guy who could guard LeBron, who was in that size range and who was quick. But you got to have then someone who's probably sort of similar who can guard Luka as well.
Now you need two. You got to have two of them now.
So is it like, are the Celtics that? Like, is it Tatum and Brown?
I mean, that would be like the NBA. Like they're going to do everything possible to get that, because like that would be the ultimate for them. Like Celtics, Lakers, defending champs, Tatum, Brown, LeBron, Luka. Like that would be just that $70 billion TV deal. They'd be like, we should have charged more.
Well, right. Well, because I got to tell you, they're probably really scared about the prospect of an OKC Cleveland final, which could happen.
Yeah. Well, all right. That's a nice transition for us into, you just had this video. You have been battling off trolls for a full day now. You talked about entertainment value. You just had this video on SGA, on fouls, on Chris Finch's quote about how you can't touch them. You talked about entertainment value, all these things. So like, let me just ask you one question, because I'm fascinated with this topic. Does the NBA have a foul grifting problem?
I have to spend a lot of time trying to help people over the last several years, because we had guys like Joel Embiid. Is it a problem? I would say half the time I'm trying to talk people off the ledge because they don't necessarily understand the rules. So is it a rule problem, aesthetic problem, or is it what the players are doing to manipulate? And so there's a couple different things. And so, and then, well, I don't even know how we're going to attack this because there's so many different facets. But basically, if we want to stay focused a little bit on the SGA thing for a minute, because I guess I had forgotten, got disconnected, been apart from the notion that he is a real big foul grifter and people hate watching him play. Like, to me, I'm watching him be the most unstoppable scorer from anywhere on the court this year. And so I don't know why that wouldn't be exciting to see. Like, this is amazing to watch. The guy, you can't keep in front of him. He can score anywhere in the mid-range. He can score down in the basket. He could now hit threes. So what's the problem? He doesn't throw his head back like he used to, right? I don't see it as much this year. Do you?
Oh, me? Yeah, absolutely.
This year we've seen the whole flailing head thing back, which it used to be an issue, which is annoying to watch. I get it.
There's a little bit of that. I think there's some of that for me. I think there's other things that get me, but keep going. I think there's a little bit of that still, but not as much as it used to be. Right.
And that was like the Harden thing would do it as well, like the big head thing, which, but by the way, we've seen that forever. I mean, I had a high school teammate that would do that in the 80s, and try, and it was startling. It's like, shit, did he just get shot? Like, it looked like he was completely fouled, right? So I get that. That's frustrating. But as far as like what we saw against in the two games against Minnesota, the reason why I did the video is because rarely do you get a opposing coach sort of call out the refs and call out a player like that when he says you can't touch Shai. And I'm like, okay, well, let's see if that's true, because, let's look at these games that he just was coming off of looking at and saying you can't touch him. Is he right? And it was like, they missed some calls. There were calls that they could have called for Shai as he's going to the basket. They didn't call. So there's examples of them touching him without being called a foul. But I got to tell you, like, almost all of them were just like they were reaching in across his body. And what his skill is that he can pull up very quickly into a shot. Now, the rules do not prohibit you from taking a shot whenever you want to shoot it. Okay. And a lot of those shots end up pretty close. Like, they're going at the rim and like they're like a few inches off. It's not like sometimes you see Joel Embiid do this where he just ends up flailing in and he's not even barely looking at the basket when he's doing that. Right. I get that. That's not a problem. But when we're talking about like, a 1-footed runner or a pull up off of both feet from 18, that he gets into the shooting motion and shoots it. Like, there's just simply no way with the rules as they exist now to ignore that. Those refs would get penalized in their review the next day going through those plays if they didn't call those.
So do you think it's foul grifting problem by the players, or do you think it's what the rules are from the NBA that's the issue?
I mean, I think it's the big thing is the rules are the rules, right? There's a legal contact, legal guarding position, all those different things. I do think that the referees do have to exercise discretion, advantage, disadvantage, because otherwise they would call fouls on every single play. We can't have that, right? So that's another piece of it. But I just don't understand how anybody would be able to either legislate the shot selection out of the game. It's like sort of what the only answer I'm hearing and the only alternative I'm hearing to that complaint is that he shouldn't be able to pull up whenever he wants to and shoot a shot.
So I asked a few people yesterday. We were texting about this, and I was like, man, I gotta ask a few people. So I asked about like 5 or 6 front office guys. I asked a few scouts. I've asked a few assistant coaches, and I asked specifically those 2 questions: like, is there a foul grifting problem? And before I even said anything else, they all mentioned Shai. And then when we talked specifically about Shai, the biggest thing that I heard back that was a common thing was not so much that it's every call he gets. Like, yes, there was some griping with the calls he gets, but it was more about the damage that he's allowed to do with his off arm that isn't legislated. And then he's creating these advantages where guys are trying to either get back, or more so what I heard a lot was he's kind of setting the level of physicality that is allowed. So if he's getting his body into you and you're not allowed to get your body into him, like that was more so what I heard back more than anything else, is like the lack of legislation against like his aggression as an offensive player. So you've watched a lot of them. Like, where would you stand on that?
Why is SGA somehow different? Why do they think that, Tatum doesn't get those calls? Well, look how Tatum plays versus how Shai plays. Shai is much more explosive, much more shifty than someone like Tatum, and he's constantly going in different directions, right? So it's already like a different level of having to try and guard and keep yourself in legal guarding position.
I think there's a level of, yes, like he creates these fouls, like he does a great job. And to me, like full disclosure, like I've worked with all NBA guys. I've taught foul grifting. Like this is something that like when guys are that good, they're consistently creating all of these advantages where the defender is trying to catch up, where the defender is off balance. And Shai does that a lot. And so like bringing your mind to be consciously aware of when you're creating these moments and how you can take advantage to get free throws in those moments, like after you're in rhythm and on balance and the defender isn't, like that's a real thing. And he's incredible at it. So like, it's not so much that I don't think he does those things. He's phenomenal at that stuff. And he's also really intelligent about knowing when and where to do those things. My thing is more so of like, it's an entertainment value. And if you give these guys like a box, which is what they've given them within the rules, like they've created this box, they will find a way to get like the biggest competitive advantage on the margins. And he's done that. And so like a lot of times I don't think he's making basketball plays. A lot of times I think he's actively trying to draw fouls. I think there's some level of like when you're caught doing this, there has to be a foul grifting penalty. And it's got to be an offensive foul on you, not just like, oh man, the ball's taken out. Like there has to be some level of, fear created. Because right now, one of the front office execs I talked to yesterday, they said there's a $2,000 flopping penalty. They don't enforce it. And that's like a nice bottle of wine to these guys. He was like, that's nothing. Like it's a Wednesday bottle of wine. So like the risk reward of earning those 2 free throws and getting this high yield, possession, and there being like nothing other than like, oh man, the ball is given back to the other team. Like it's not actually going to be a foul on me. Nothing's actually going to happen. I think that has to change in order to kind of legislate the stuff out, because if you don't, the reward is just way too high for these guys not to keep pushing the limits on how to get free throws.
Well, and they've already done that. I mean, remember they took away the Trae Young stuff where he was jumping a little bit too far into players and overtly. So they on the margins, they will adjust the rules to get rid of that kind of stuff. And, the clamp that James Harden was doing, or they don't give Shai free throws on some of those because he hasn't gathered the ball when they hit him.
I'll send you a Trae Young video, or I send you some Embiid and Shai clips. Like, these fouls are being called because their arms are going up to shoot the basketball. And if you're telling me their arms are going up not to shoot the basketball, well, that's not a basketball play. Like that, they're just throwing their arms up. Like, no, that would never happen. So like, they're throwing their arms up to try to draw attention and act like they're shooting the ball. So if it is a foul because their arms are going up, that needs to be a shooting foul. And the NBA right now is trying to split the baby by calling the foul, but not calling it a shooting foul. I don't have a good enough read, but I do know that the sentiment I heard was the third thing that I heard in all the conversations I had yesterday was that nobody thought the way he was officiated during the regular season will be the way he's officiated in the playoffs.
Okay, and that's true too. And by the way, remember a couple of years ago, they went to playoff style refereeing in the regular season. And I think everyone was really enjoying that. And I certainly did.
Yeah.
But we were also shocked. Like, right, the guy would drive to the basket and there was a little bit of contact and they would miss whatever. And then they'd keep playing. And I think everyone was like, wait, there's no whistle. So it was almost jarring. But I think we like that.
I think that's
the answer.
Yeah.
Maybe they could kind of go more like to the playoff style. And I think that people were to respond to that. So there are emotions. But again, I can't vision the fouls I went over in my video on SGA. And I went over 8 or 9 of them, probably out of the 15 or whatever. Those have to be called in the playoffs too.
I love it. All right, Coach Nick, thank you for taking the time. Coach Nick, B-Ball Breakdown, YouTube, like, subscribe, rate. What do you have coming out this week? I know you just told me you did a Steph Curry video. Those are always incredible. He's the best. Anything else in the pipeline?
Yeah, I want to do one on Cade Cunningham and the Pistons, who are on a really hot winning streak right now. And I think that Cade is under the radar a little bit. But let me ask you this. Do you think that he is ready to be in that upper tier of top 10?
Top 10 point guards, players?
Well, I'm kind of thinking, right now, where would you put him overall in the top whatever?
So I talked to a Pistons guy the other day, and we were talking about Cade and where he was at. And I asked him, I was like, where do you think he is in the point guard hierarchy? And he gave me a list, and I gotta be honest. I then asked, I was surprised where he had him. And I was like, where would you have him in the playoff point guard hierarchy? And he only moved him up a little bit. And to me, we haven't seen him there, but for me, when I see Cade Cunningham's game, I think he's going to move up once you see him in a playoff setting. Because the biggest thing, if you're the lead ball handler and the best player on a team and you get to the playoffs, being able to shoot the ball, being able to hit downhill threes versus drop coverage and bring two up to the level, it unleashes everything. We saw it last year with Luka in the playoffs. We saw what he did to Minnesota. We saw it with Anthony Edwards, with Steph Curry, with Damian Lillard when they've made those runs. Like, if you're a lead ball handler and if you can do that, you can create incredible playoff offense off of just your pick and roll play. So to me, I think when we see him in that setting, wherever he's at now, he's going to move up a lot of levels in people's eyes.
Okay. Yeah. I think he's probably like top 20, if you want to say that right now. And there's just things in this game which I really think he can improve on, which is exciting because the baseline right now for him is pretty good. And I think he needs to be more, it'd be nice if he got more recognition on that one. And then plus, it's always amazing what happens and how much better you play when the roster gets better. Yeah. Like, who knew, right? And maybe the coaching got better too, right?
Yeah, shooting and spacing is a real thing, man. So Coach Nick, thank you so much for coming on. It was a blast having you here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate it.
All right, we'll catch you guys on the next one.